The first time I realized money couldn't buy safety was the night someone tried to set my mother on fire. Not in some movie way, not with a dramatic soundtrack. Real, quiet. A slick trail of gasoline behind our guest house in Miami, a match struck, and then the sudden roar, like the ocean itself had turned angry. My mom, Imani Kingsley, didn't scream. She never did. She just grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt and dragged me toward the pool, her eyes scanning like a soldier. We dove in fully dressed, and the heat rolled over us as the flames ate the hedges. When we climbed out, shivering, the guests were already running and shouting. My wife, Harper Sterling Kingsley, was holding our daughter, Aria, tight against her chest. Harper's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Darius," she said, and I could hear it, fear trying to hide behind control. "This isn't random." It wasn't. I looked across the yard and saw a man standing near the gate, watching like he'd come to enjoy a show. He wore a staff polo shirt, but I knew every person on my payroll. He wasn't one of ours. The second our eyes met, he turned and disappeared into the night. I chased him barefoot, wet clothes slapping my legs. I reached the street and saw a black SUV idling under a palm tree. The back window was tinted, but I could feel someone looking out from inside. The SUV rolled away slowly, slow enough to let me know they could have been fast, but chose not to be. A message: you can be a billionaire, you can build skyscrapers, you can fly private. But the moment you think you're untouchable, somebody reminds you you're still human. And in our case, somebody wanted to remind us we were still black. We weren't always in America. My mother and I lived in West Africa for years, years of heat and dust, and tight-knit streets where everyone knew your name. My father died when I was young, and my mother raised me with a strange mix of softness and steel. She taught me that respect was priceless, but also that the world punishes the proud when they forget to stay alert. When I came to the US for university, I thought I'd just get a degree and come back. Then the internet business I built in my dorm room exploded. Then the first big contract. Then the first million. Then the first 100 million. Then a billion that didn't feel real until the taxes hit. By the time I was 35, we owned a logistics and fintech empire that quietly powered half the e-commerce routes on the East Coast. We employed thousands. We paid more in salaries than some towns made in a year. We also became the kind of family people love to talk about. Because Harper wasn't just white, Harper Sterling was sterling. Old money. Her family's name sat on hospital wings and museum plaques. Her father had once told me politely that I wasn't what he pictured for his daughter. Harper married me anyway. Then we had kids, Aria with her hazel eyes and curls like a cloud, and Miles with skin like warm caramel and a laugh that could fix bad days. We were a mixed family in a world that loved to pretend it didn't care, until it did. Sometimes the hate was simple: side eyes at upscale restaurants, whispered jokes behind smiling faces, strangers touching my kids' hair like they were exhibits. Sometimes it was loud. A man at a charity gala once asked Harper, right in front of me, if she felt safe. But the worst hate wasn't always from strangers. Some of it came from people who looked like us. It started with small things. A speech I gave at a local business conference about generational wealth and discipline went viral. Most people applauded. Some people tore it apart. "Look at him," one influencer said on a live stream, "talking like he's better than everybody. The moment a black man gets money, he forgets where he came from." I wanted to ignore it. Harper told me to ignore it. My mother warned me not to. "Jealousy," she said, stirring tea like she was reading the future in it, "doesn't always throw stones first. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it waits." I should have listened harder. The next week, our company faced a sudden investigation from the city. Anonymous complaints about unsafe conditions, illegal hiring, fraud. None of it was true. We had records, audits, compliance certificates. But the timing wasn't an accident. Then my son's school got an anonymous email claiming Miles had threatened another child. Miles was 6. His biggest threat was refusing broccoli. Then Harper's favorite charity, an organization we'd funded for years, received a letter accusing her of using donations to buy a black man a lifestyle. I could feel the pressure building like a storm. That night in Miami, when someone tried to burn my mother alive, the storm finally spoke. The police came. Sirens, questions. They were polite, but I could see the calculation in some of their eyes. Rich black man, white wife, big house. Fire, they weren't sure who the villain was supposed to be. One officer pulled me aside. Any enemies, Mr. Kingsley? I almost laughed. Do you have time for a list? They found a matchbox near the bushes. No fingerprints, of course. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. But my mother knew something else. While the police talked, she walked through the yard, barefoot like she belonged to the earth. She stopped near the gate and pointed at the gravel. Look, she said. A tiny metal charm lay half-buried, an engraved circle with a lion symbol on it. It wasn't random. It wasn't trash. I recognized it because I'd seen it before, years ago, at an event in Atlanta. It belonged to an exclusive private club for wealthy entrepreneurs. A brotherhood, they called it. Invitations only, power networking. I'd been invited once. I never joined, because something about it felt wrong. Too secretive, too hungry. Harper looked at the charm in my palm. What is that? My mother answered before I could. A warning. We went back inside, the smell of smoke clinging to our hair and clothes. Harper put the kids to bed. Miles kept asking if the fire was a dragon. Arya asked if Grandma was going to die. I sat with my mother in the kitchen while the house finally went quiet. I'm sorry, I said. I brought this to you. She took my face in her hands like I was still a boy. No, she said softly. You built a life, you built a family, you built hope, and some people can't stand seeing hope wearing your skin. Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they lit something cold inside my chest. Because I knew then this wasn't going to stop on its own. And whoever was behind it wasn't just a random racist stranger. This was targeted, organized, planned. I opened my laptop and started digging into the last 3 months. Every complaint, every email, every suspicious call. Patterns, connections, names, IP addresses. I pulled security footage from the Miami property. At 2:14 a.m., a hooded figure slipped behind the hedges. At 2:16, a second figure stood by the gate, watching. The watcher was the key. I zoomed in frame by frame until the pixels turned into a face. And my blood ran cold, because I knew him. His name was Malachi Vance, a black man, a man who used to shake my hand and call me brother at business conferences. A man who once told me, smiling, "You're inspiring, Darius." A man who ran a flashy community investment brand that looked like empowerment on the surface, but underneath, it was pure ego. Harper came into the kitchen and saw my face. What? I turned the laptop toward her. She stared at the screen. That's not who I expected. Me neither, I said, my voice low. My mother's eyes didn't widen. They didn't flicker. She just nodded like she'd already known. Jealousy, she repeated. Sometimes it smiles. I stood up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a businessman. I felt like a son protecting his mother. Like a husband protecting his family. Like a man who was done being polite. Outside, the ocean waves kept moving like nothing happened. Miami lights glittered like a postcard. The world looked perfect. But inside me, something had changed. If Malachi Vance thought he could terrorize my family to prove a point, if he thought he could punish us because our love didn't match his idea of what black success should look like, then he had no idea who he'd just awakened. And listen, before the next part gets even crazier, if you want this story to continue and you don't want to miss the moment, I set the trap that flips everything. Make sure you subscribe, because part 2 is where the real game begins. Because I wasn't going to call him out online. I wasn't going to give him a speech. I was going to do something far more dangerous. I was going to let him think he was winning. And then I was going to take everything he built, one secret at a time. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification, an unknown number, one message. You should have stayed in Africa. The first move in any war is not strength. It is silence. I replied to the unknown number with a single line, wrong continent, wrong man. Then I shut the phone off. Not because I was scared, because I wanted him to wonder. Malachi Vance thrived on attention, on being seen, on feeling like the smartest man in every room. Men like him didn't burn houses for fun. They burned futures to send messages. They wanted reactions, apologies, public breakdowns. I gave him nothing. For 3 days, I did what I always did. I went to meetings, signed contracts, took investor calls, smiled for cameras. Harper attended a museum fundraiser with my mother and the kids. We posted normal photos. A family at brunch, a sunrise over Biscayne Bay. It drove him crazy, because when predators strike and the prey keeps walking, it challenges their sense of power. On the fourth night, he blinked. Another text. Your mother almost died. And you're still playing rich boy dress up. I stared at the words, then I typed back, you missed. It was the only insult I needed. That same hour, my cybersecurity team flagged a breach attempt on one of our subsidiary servers. Amateur. Loud, emotional, someone trying to see if our walls were real. It wasn't a hacker. It was a message, so I decided to send one back. I had my assistant leak a controlled rumor into a few business circles that Kingsley Logistics was overextended, that an international deal had collapsed, that our cash flow was tightening. It wasn't true, but it was believable. Malachi's brand fed on moments like that. He positioned himself as a savior for struggling Black founders. He loved swooping in when blood hit the water. 2 days later, he emailed me. Not directly, through a mutual foundation. Subject, support in uncertain times. The audacity made me smile. We met in a private lounge overlooking the Hudson. He arrived in a cream suit, gold watch catching light like a flare. He hugged me like family. Darius, he said, voice warm. Man, I heard about the fire, that broke my heart. I watched his eyes. They didn't carry grief, they carried satisfaction. I appreciate you coming, I said. He leaned in. We gotta protect our own, bro. Too many of us make it out and forget the bridge behind us. I never forgot, I said calmly. He nodded. That's why I'm here. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, a proposed partnership. His community investment fund would acquire a minority stake in one of our shipping subsidiaries. Public optics, unity, private reality, access, exactly what he wanted. Media loves this kind of story, he said. 2 Black kings standing together, shows strength. Strength. The same word my mother used before the fire. I signed the letter of intent. Malachi's smile sharpened. What he didn't know was that every system we owned ran on mirrored architecture. The subsidiary he targeted was isolated clean. A sandbox, a maze. Within 48 hours, his team began requesting data access. We gave it to them. Carefully. Every digital corridor they walked down was lined with invisible threads. Every file they touched echoed. Every login recorded. He believed he was entering our house. In reality, he was stepping into a glass box. Harper noticed the shift in me. You're quieter, she said one night on our balcony. I'm listening, I replied. She studied my face. To him or to yourself? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't just fighting Malachi. I was fighting the version of myself that still wanted to believe every man who shared my skin shared my heart. My mother sensed it. You don't have to become cruel to win, she said softly. I know, I replied, but I do have to become precise. The first crack in Malachi's armor appeared during a charity gala in Manhattan. He was the keynote speaker. I was seated in the front row with Harper beside me. He spoke about unity, about healing racial divides, about protecting Black families. The audience applauded. Then he said something he shouldn't have. Some of us build empires on the backs of white institutions, he said smoothly, and forget who really needs that power. His eyes flicked toward me. A challenge, a warning, the room shifted. Harper squeezed my hand. I stood. Malachi, I said, my voice calm through the microphone. You're right, power should serve those without it. That's why transparency matters. That's why we open our books. That's why we protect families, every kind of family. The crowd murmured. He smiled tightly. I smiled wider. That night, a file appeared in our system from Malachi's side. A mistake, buried in a batch upload. It was encrypted, but it was sloppy. My team cracked it in 20 minutes. Inside were transaction logs, offshore transfers, shell corporations, donations cycling back into private accounts. Fraud, the kind that destroyed careers and reputations and legacies. We didn't move, we waited, because predators are most dangerous when cornered, and most careless when confident. Malachi grew bolder. He hinted online that not all billionaires deserved their seats. He retweeted posts questioning my marriage. He funded influencers who framed me as ashamed of my people. Then he sent another message. You think she'd still love you if you were broke? I didn't respond. Instead, I booked a private family trip. Bahamas, white sand, open sky. We posted a photo. My mother in a sun hat, Harper laughing, our kids building castles. Caption, grateful. And right here, before this storm turns into fire, if you're still with me, if you want to see how a man like Malachi Vance collapses under the weight of his own secrets, make sure you subscribe. Because part 3 is where the mask falls. Back in New York, Malachi's team requested deeper access. We approved. They stepped further into the maze. What they didn't see was the mirror closing behind them. I watched the live feed of their activity late one night. Every click, every copied file, every hidden upload. He thought he was learning our weaknesses. In truth, he was teaching me everything I needed to know to end him. My mother walked into my office quietly. Be careful, she said. I am, I replied. She placed her hand on my shoulder. No, she said gently. Be kind, even now. Don't let his poison become yours. I nodded. But inside, the fire that almost killed her still burned. And this time, it wasn't going to miss. The next morning, Malachi Vance sent me a final message. You're standing in a storm you don't understand. I typed back. You built it. Then I pressed send, because I knew something he didn't. The maze was complete, and the door behind him was already locked. The storm didn't arrive all at once. It crept, it whispered, it wore suits and smiles and polite emails. Malachi's people began moving faster inside our systems, not reckless, confident. They downloaded analytics, studied logistics flows, built internal models of our routes. He wanted leverage. He wanted to know where to squeeze. What he didn't realize was that every file he touched was a mirror. We embedded decoy ledgers, perfectly imperfect. Numbers that almost made sense. Routes that looked profitable but weren't. Contracts that hinted at weak margins and unstable partners. It was a chessboard built entirely for him, and he took the bait. 2 weeks later, an article dropped in a niche finance blog. Kingsley Logistics faces quiet turbulence. It wasn't viral. It didn't need to be, just enough smoke to make investors look twice. Then came a second article. Then a third, each sourced from anonymous insiders. Each echoing the same narrative: overextension, internal conflict, mismanagement. Malachi's fingerprints were invisible, but I could smell him. Harper noticed how the air around us changed. At a restaurant in Tribeca, a man recognized me and muttered, "Shame," under his breath. At Miles' school, another parent asked if we were moving. At a charity board meeting, someone suggested we pause a joint project. Hate had learned to wear professionalism. My mother watched it unfold with quiet eyes. "This is what they do," she said one night. "They don't break your bones, they break your place in the world." I sat beside her. Not this time. Because while Malachi planted doubt in public, in private, he was getting desperate. He wanted proof. He wanted something real. So he crossed a line. Our head of security burst into my office one morning, pale. "They tried to access your family's travel logs." I stood slowly. "From where?" "From a shell address tied to Vance's network." That wasn't business. That was threat. That was family. I drove home in silence. Harper met me at the door. "You're vibrating," she said. "They went after the kids," I replied. Her jaw tightened. For the first time since the fire, I saw something dark in her eyes. "They don't get to do that," she said. "No," I agreed. "They don't." That night I called Malachi. He answered on the second ring. "Darius," he said smoothly. "To what do I owe? You touched my children," I said. A pause, then a soft chuckle. "Your paranoid brother." "Don't lie to me," I said quietly. "You don't have the right." Another pause, longer. "You built a life people don't forgive," he said. "You walk around with a white woman and mixed babies like you escaped something the rest of us are still trapped in." "I escaped nothing," I replied. "I built on systems that were never meant for us," he snapped. "And you wear them like trophies." "And you burn mothers alive?" I asked. Silence. "I didn't plan that," he said finally. "I just wanted to scare you." "You did," I replied. "Good," he said, "because fear keeps people honest." "I'm done talking," I said. "Stay away from my family," he laughed. "You can't stop a wave, Darius." I hung up. Harper held my hands. Are we safe? She asked. Yes, I said. It was a promise, not a guess. The next phase required something dangerous. Visibility. We launched a public initiative. Kingsley Foundation, Family First. Scholarships for mixed-race children facing discrimination. Legal aid for families targeted by hate. Media campaigns featuring real stories. We put our pain in the light. It went viral. Not because it was flashy. Because it was honest. Harper spoke on morning shows. My mother told her story of Africa, of loss, of rebuilding. I spoke about fire, about fear, about choosing not to shrink. The world responded. Support poured in. Letters, messages. But so did anger. Comment sections burned. Sellout, race traitor, house pet. Malachi watched from the shadows, and he panicked, because influence is power, and we were gaining it. His network began leaking harder. A former employee accused us of labor violations. A blogger claimed we bribed inspectors. A YouTuber hinted at marital secrets. Each lie carefully planted, each one thin, but together a fog. I waited. Then one night my team found it. The spine, a master account. A hub. A financial node connecting Malachi's foundation, his shell companies, and the influencers attacking us. It wasn't just fraud, it was orchestration. We traced payments. Patterns, dates. Every attack on us aligned with a transfer. He wasn't reacting. He was directing. We had him, but we still didn't move. Because the best traps don't close when the prey steps in. They close when the prey feels safe. So we gave him something better than fear. Hope. I invited him to a private retreat. Brotherhood Summit. Exclusive, powerful, discreet. Location, Aspen, a gathering of elite Black founders. No press, no phones, just influence. He accepted within minutes. He arrived in a black coat, smiling like a king. He hugged me. Proud of you, he said. I smiled back. The lodge was warm, fireplaces, wood beams. Snow outside like a clean slate. He spoke to the group. Inspired them, fed them vision. They applauded, then I stood. Before we end, I said, I want to show you something. A screen lowered, a file opened. At first it looked like numbers, then names, then dates, then voices, recordings, emails. Messages, screenshots. The room shifted. Malachi's smile faltered. Darius, he said lightly. What is this? A mirror, I replied. I played a clip, his voice. Push the story, make it look organic. Another clip. Target the kid's angle. That's where he's soft. Another. I don't need him gone, I need him smaller. The room went silent. Faces turned. Phones lifted. He stood. You think you're clever, he said. You think this makes you righteous. I think, I replied, that you mistook patience for weakness. He lunged toward me. Security moved. I raised a hand. Let him speak, I said. He stared at me with raw hate. You betrayed your people, he said. For comfort, for whiteness. I shook my head. No, I said softly. I betrayed your lie, the one that says we must hurt each other to belong. His voice cracked. They'll never accept you. Maybe not, I replied, but I don't need their permission to be whole. He looked around. No allies, only witnesses. You'll regret this, he said. I nodded. Maybe, I said. But my children won't. The doors opened. Federal agents stepped in. The room exhaled. Malachi's empire collapsed in a single breath. As they led him away, he looked back at me, not with rage, with understanding. He had lost. Not to power, but to restraint. Outside, snow fell. Inside, something healed. And for the first time since the fire, I felt the storm begin to clear. The world didn't end when Malachi Vance was arrested. It shifted. News outlets called it the Aspen betrayal. Some praised me for exposing corruption. Others painted me as a traitor who sold out one of his own. Social media fractured into camps overnight. Hero, snake, savior, Judas. Every word felt like a stone. The federal investigation expanded fast. Malachi's foundation froze. His influencers deleted posts. His partners went silent. Men who once called him visionary now pretended they'd never known him. But power never disappears. It looks for a new body. And hate never travels alone. 3 days after Aspen, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. You think one man was the storm, you only saw the lightning. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my security chief. We're elevating everything, I said. Double on the kids, triple on mom. No routine, Harper stood in the doorway, listening. "You're not surprised," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm realistic." Because Malachi wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. The deeper network, the ones who funded him, empowered him, protected him, were still breathing, and they were angry. At first, the attacks were subtle. A zoning permit delayed in Chicago, a customs hold on our European shipments, a bank audit randomly scheduled. Then came the messages. Anonymous emails to Harper, "You're corrupting him. Your children will never belong. You're a phase. We are blood." She deleted them. I saved them, because patterns tell stories. My mother, Imani, refused to leave the house. "They want me afraid," she said, "so I won't be." She began volunteering again, this time at a community center for immigrant women. One afternoon, she didn't come home on time. 30 minutes, then an hour, then 2, I called her, no answer, my chest tightened. Security traced her last location, the community center. We drove there in silence. The building stood quiet. Lights off, door unlocked. Inside, chairs were overturned. A scarf lay on the floor, my mother's. Harper whispered, "Darius." I felt the world narrow. Then a phone buzzed, a video file from an unknown sender. I opened it. My mother sat in a chair, not bound, not crying. Just calm. Behind her, a shadow moved. A voice spoke off camera. "You exposed one of our pillars," the voice said. "Now you understand cost." My mother looked into the lens. "Do not bend," she said. The video cut. Harper covered her mouth. I didn't scream, I didn't break, I became empty. And in that emptiness I became dangerous. Every system we owned lit up, every contact, every satellite, every favor. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Because whoever took her wanted leverage. They wanted a trade. And trades required dialogue. 10 minutes later, a message arrived. Resign from all public initiatives. Transfer the foundation to neutral trustees. Speak publicly in support of Malachi Vance as misguided, not criminal. Do this, and your mother returns. Harper shook. "You can't," she whispered. I closed my eyes. For the first time in my life, money meant nothing. Power meant nothing. Only one thing mattered, her, the woman who crossed oceans for me, who taught me to stand, who jumped into fire without screaming. I typed, "Proof of life every hour." Seconds passed. A new video. My mother smiled. "I'm still here," she said, "and I raised you better than to kneel." I slammed the desk. Harper held me. "They know you," she whispered. "They know you won't let her die." "They don't know her," I replied, because my mother didn't raise a king. She raised a fortress. I activated something I'd never used. Project Atlas. A private intelligence mesh built quietly after my first billion. Former analysts, ethical hackers, retired field operators. People who didn't exist online. They didn't ask questions, they asked coordinates. We traced metadata, compression signatures, background hum. In one video, a train passed. In another, a bell, a wind pattern. We narrowed it down. A private rural estate outside Savannah. Owned by a holding company. Connected to one man. Elias Crow. White. Old money. A board member on 3 foundations Malachi once partnered with. A man who publicly preached unity, privately financed fear. I sent him a message. "You took my mother." His reply came instantly. "Your mother is safe for now. You think I'll fold?" "You will," he wrote. "Because men like you are built on gratitude." I sent back one word. "Watch." We didn't storm the estate. We surrounded it invisibly. Drones, thermal scans, signal blocks. We learned schedules, shift changes, blind spots. I refused to involve the police. Not because I didn't trust them, because I didn't trust timing. Crow wanted control. He wanted me to humiliate myself publicly. He wanted to rewrite the story. I scheduled a press conference. The world expected surrender. Harper stood beside me. Cameras flashed. I spoke. "Recently, my family has been targeted. My mother was taken by individuals seeking to reverse justice. I will not comply with extortion. Not because I lack love, but because love does not submit to terror." Gasps. I continued. "If anything happens to her, the truth about every donor, every shell company, every hidden transaction tied to Elias Crow will be released worldwide." Silence. A phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. "You've just signed her death warrant," the message read. I replied, "No, I signed yours." Because Project Atlas had finished mapping the estate, Every room, every camera, every guard. And we found something Crow didn't expect. A second captive, a young woman not related to us, a former employee, a witness. He wasn't just bargaining, he was collecting. I leaned toward Harper. They don't know we already know, she nodded. Then end it, she whispered. Night fell. In Savannah, lights dimmed across a private estate. Inside, men laughed, drank, confident. They believed power lived in shadows. They forgot shadows only exist because light is blocked. And we were coming with dawn. Before the next part unfolds, before you see how a billionaire built a prison out of privilege and how we tore it open without a single shot, make sure you subscribe. Because part 5 isn't about revenge, it's about rescue. And it's the moment the storm finally turns in our favor. Dawn didn't arrive with birdsong. It arrived with silence. A thick, unnatural quiet that wrapped around Elias Crow's estate like a held breath. From the outside, the property looked like a sanctuary, white columns, sprawling gardens, oak trees older than nations. A place built to look eternal. A place where men like Crow believed consequence could never reach. But every empire has a spine, and spines break. Project Atlas moved without sound. No sirens, no flashing lights, no headlines. Just precision. Our drones hovered above the tree line, mapping thermal signatures. Guards patrolled in predictable loops, men paid well enough to stop asking questions. Their radios whispered, their cameras blinked. And then their systems went dark, not a crash, a soft fade. The estate lost its eyes first, then its ears. Inside the house, Crow poured wine for 2 guests, confident in the illusion of control. My father built this place, he said. He believed land was the only power that couldn't be taken. He didn't hear the gate unlock. He didn't hear the gravel shift. He didn't hear the past arrive. In a basement room beneath the West Wing, my mother sat with her hands folded in her lap. Not bound, not broken, waiting. Across from her, a young woman, Nina, clutched a blanket around her shoulders. They won't hurt you, Nina whispered. My mother smiled gently. They already tried, she said. It didn't work. Footsteps approached. Not hurried, not heavy, measured. A door opened. A man entered, not a guard, not a captor, a stranger, black, calm. Mrs. Kingsley, he said. I'm here to take you home. My mother studied him. Where is my son? She asked. Outside, he replied, watching the storm end. Her eyes closed, not in relief, in recognition, because she had known they would come. Upstairs, Crow froze mid-sentence as every screen in the room turned black. The lights dimmed, then returned, but something had changed. The house felt hollow. Check the perimeter, he snapped. No response. He stood, walked to the window. The gardens were empty, too empty. Then a voice filled the room, not from speakers. From everywhere. Elias Crow, he spun. Who, you wanted leverage, I said, so you took my mother. He recognized my voice. Fear flickered. You think this is a game? He asked. No, I replied. I think it's a lesson. Guards rushed in, stopped, because the doors behind them sealed, and men they didn't know stood where exits once lived. Atlas operatives. Silent, still, Crow backed away. You can't do this, he said. You're not the law. No, I replied. I'm the consequence. A screen ignited behind him. Footage, his transactions, his emails, his instructions, his hidden properties, his other captive. Nina's face appeared, alive, looking into the camera. I told them everything, she said. Crow collapsed into a chair. You don't understand, he whispered. This world runs on control. I didn't create it. I just learned how to use it. And I learned how to break it, I said. My mother entered the room. Not escorted, not hurried, walking, her eyes met his. You thought I was weak, she said, because I raised a son who didn't hate. He couldn't look at her. You used fear to build a kingdom, she continued. He used love to protect one. She turned to me. It's time, she said. I nodded. The house filled with sound, sirens, real ones, law enforcement, federal, international. Every agency Crow had avoided his entire life. We didn't hide him, we delivered him, wrapped, exposed, irrefutable. As he was led away, he looked at me, not with hatred, with collapse. You could have ruled, he said. I already do, I replied. Just not over people. Outside, the sun rose, not dramatic, not golden, just honest. My mother stepped into the light. Harper ran to her, held her, cried. Miles and Arya wrapped around her legs. She knelt, held them. "I told you," she whispered. "Fire doesn't decide who we are." News broke within hours. Crow arrested, properties seized, accounts frozen. Nina entered protection. Malachi's network dissolved. And for the first time in months, the world exhaled. That night, we sat on our balcony. No guards, no alarms, just air. Harper leaned against me. "You didn't become what they were," she said. "I almost did," I replied. "But you didn't." I watched my mother laugh with the kids. "She never doubted you," Harper added. "I did," I admitted. She kissed my cheek. "Next time," she said softly, "trust the boy she raised." Because the storm was over. And the house still stood. But something greater remained. Not wealth, not influence. A legacy untouched by fear. And in part 6, you'll see what happens when the world finally hears the truth, and how a family once hunted becomes a symbol no one can burn again. The world didn't celebrate quietly. When Elias Crow's arrest became public, it wasn't just another headline. It was a rupture. His name had lived for decades behind hospital wings, art galleries, unity foundations, and whispered donor lists. No one expected him to fall, especially not like this. The footage of my mother walking out of his estate, unbroken, dignified, eyes steady, circulated everywhere. People didn't see a hostage. They saw a queen. Crow's empire collapsed in waves. Boards resigned. Foundations shut down. Shell companies unraveled. Politicians returned donations. Men who once dined in his shadow erased him from their history. And for the first time, the narrative changed. Not rich black man in danger. Not interracial family controversy. But this: a mother survived terror. A son refused to kneel. A family chose dignity over fear. Harper was invited to speak at global forums. Not as the white wife, but as a woman who stood inside the storm and refused to step away. My mother became a symbol. Universities asked her to speak. Women across continents wrote letters. "You taught me to stand. You reminded me who I am. You made me believe again." She read everyone and cried over none. "Pain doesn't need applause," she said. "It needs purpose." We returned to Africa that year, not as escapees. As visitors, as bridges. We rebuilt the village where she once raised me with dust on her hands and hope in her eyes. Schools, clinics, solar grids, not monuments. Foundations. Miles ran through the same streets I once had. Arya danced with girls who shared her curls and her laughter. Harper stood beside my mother beneath an open sky. "You built a man who rebuilt the world," she said. My mother smiled. "I built a boy who remembered who he was." Back in the United States, hate didn't vanish. It never does, but it changed. It lost confidence. Because now it had a cost. Every threat was traced. Every whisper documented. Every shadow faced light. Not with rage, with structure, with truth, with systems that outlived storms. Malachi Vance pleaded guilty. Elias Crow was sentenced. Their names faded, but their lesson remained. You don't defeat hatred by becoming it. You defeat it by refusing to let it decide who you are. Years later, at a university commencement, a young girl asked me, "How did you win?" I knelt so we were eye to eye. "I didn't win," I said. "I protected what mattered." "What was that?" she asked. "My mother," I replied. "My family, and the right to exist without apology." She nodded like she understood, because children always do. The night after that speech, I stood on our balcony again. The city shimmered. Harper slept inside. The kids dreamed. My mother sat with tea, watching the sky. "You changed the world," I said. She shook her head. "You changed yourself," she replied. The world followed. I looked out at everything we had built, not as proof, as promise, because power fades, wealth moves, empires fall. But a legacy rooted in dignity cannot be burned. And somewhere in the world, a family like ours now walks a little straighter. Not because they are untouchable, but because they know this: they don't have to shrink, they don't have to kneel, they don't have to disappear, they belong. And no storm, no matter how loud, can ever take that away.